Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching, so YouTube will keep showing you stories like this. Now, let's begin. My name's Aaron. I'm 23, and I stock shelves at a mega mart on the edge of town. It's mindless work, which is exactly what I needed while taking a gap year to figure out what the hell I'm doing with my life. The overnight shift pays better, and honestly, I prefer it. No customers, no managers breathing down my neck. Just me, my earbuds, and aisle after aisle of product to unload. October 30th, I clocked in at 11 p.m. for what was supposed to be a routine reset of the seasonal section before Halloween. They'd set up this massive display near the back of the store, maybe 15 mannequins in cheap costumes. Witches, vampires, generic horror movie stuff. The kind of plasticky garbage that goes on clearance November 1st. The masks were particularly bad, you know? Those thin latex things that smell like chemicals and never fit right. Most of them were classic horror stuff. Skulls, zombie faces, that screaming ghost from the paintings. I passed the display maybe 6 times in the first 2 hours, hauling pallets back and forth. Around 1:30 a.m., I was pulling a U-boat stacked with candy when I noticed something off. One of the mannequins near the back, this one in a torn suit with a skull mask, was angled differently than before. I'm talking a subtle shift, maybe 10 degrees, but enough that it was now facing the main aisle instead of the wall. I stopped, stared at it for a solid 10 seconds. Look, mannequins don't just rotate on their own, but I figured maybe the base wasn't secured properly. Old building, uneven floors. I adjusted it back and kept working. Third pass, another one had moved. This time it was the vampire, and it had definitely turned toward the direction I'd been walking. The angle was too deliberate to be coincidence. I could feel this cold weight settling in my stomach, but I forced myself to think rationally. Maybe someone from the day shift hadn't locked the bases down. Maybe the overnight manager, Derek, was screwing with me. He'd done stuff like that before. I pulled out my phone and texted Derek, "You moving the Halloween mannequins?" He responded almost immediately. "What?" "No." Why I didn't answer. Just pocketed my phone and went back to work, but I made a point of watching the display every time I passed. 4th trip, nothing changed. 5th trip, nothing. I started to relax, convinced I'd been psyching myself out. Then I saw my face. It was 1:40 a.m. when I walked past with an empty U-boat, and there it was. Center of the display, a mannequin in a plain black hoodie and jeans. No elaborate costume. Just clothes that looked exactly like mine, right down to the red Megamart employee vest. And the mask wasn't some generic horror prop anymore. It was my face. Not a caricature, not a rough approximation. Every detail was there. The slightly crooked nose I broke playing high school baseball, the faint scar on my left cheek from a childhood bike accident. Even my stubble pattern was perfect, like someone had taken a mold while I was sleeping. My throat went dry. I couldn't move for what felt like a full minute, just standing there in the aisle staring at this thing wearing my face. The overhead lights buzzed. The refrigerator units hummed. Otherwise, complete silence. I needed to find Derek. Right then. I turned and walked fast toward the back offices, my footsteps echoing weirdly loud on the linoleum. But when I reached the break room, it was empty. His jacket was gone. I checked his office. Dark, door locked. I tried calling him. It went straight to voicemail. Here's the thing. Derek never leaves during overnight shifts. It's against policy, and he's anal about that stuff. I checked the parking lot through the back window. His car was gone. I was alone in a 100,000 square foot building at 2 a.m. The smart move would have been to leave, clock out early, make up some excuse later, but I needed my paycheck, and walking off shift meant an automatic write-up. So I told myself to finish the night, stay in the front half of the store, avoid the Halloween section entirely. That worked for maybe 20 minutes. I was restocking paper towels in aisle 7 when I heard it. Not footsteps exactly, but a soft scraping sound of plastic on linoleum, like something being dragged. It was coming from the direction of the seasonal section. I held completely still, listened. The sound stopped. Then I heard it from aisle 9, then aisle 11. Multiple sources moving independently, getting closer. I grabbed my box cutter, thumbed the blade out, and backed toward the front registers. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. When I reached the main aisle that runs the length of the store, I saw them. 6 mannequins, standing motionless at the far end, maybe 60 feet away. They'd left the display. They were just standing there in a loose semicircle, masks all angled directly at me. The one in the center was wearing my face. I couldn't breathe right. Short, shallow gasps that weren't getting enough air. I wanted to run for the front doors, but something about the way they were positioned made me hesitate. They were blocking the most direct route, and there was this horrible certainty in my gut that if I ran, they'd move. So I backed toward the emergency exit on the east side, keeping them in sight. They didn't follow, didn't move at all, just stood there watching as I fumbled for the crash bar and shoved the door open. The alarm shrieked, and I ran to my car without looking back. I called the police from the parking lot, told them someone had broken in, that I'd seen figures moving inside. 2 officers showed up 15 minutes later, went in with flashlights. They found nothing. No mannequins out of place, no signs of intrusion. The Halloween display was exactly as it should be. All 15 mannequins accounted for and properly positioned. I quit the next day. Didn't give notice, just never came back. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. When the cops checked the security footage, they found nothing unusual. Just me working alone for the entire shift. At one point, around 1:50 a.m., the camera shows me standing completely still in aisle 7 for almost 4 minutes, staring at nothing. I don't remember that. I don't remember standing there at all. I'm a freelance photographer, mostly real estate and lifestyle stuff, nothing exciting. On October 30th, I got hired by a neighborhood association to photograph their Halloween decorations. They wanted atmospheric shots for their website, social media, that kind of thing. Easy money. I showed up around 7:30 when it was properly dark, when all the fog machines and orange lights would look their best. The neighborhood was one of those older subdivisions where every house tries to outdo the next. 12-foot skeletons, animated witches, entire graveyards and front yards. I spent about an hour moving house to house, getting wide shots and detail work. Standard stuff. I wasn't even thinking about it, just working through my mental checklist. Exposure, composition, check the playback, move on. Around house number 8 or 9, I started reviewing the photos on my camera screen while I walked to the next location. That's when I noticed it. In the background of the first shot, a house with a massive inflatable dragon. There was this small dark shape in one of the second-story windows. Not quite circular, not quite oval, just a dark smudge against the glass. I scrolled to the next photo. Different house, different angle, same shape, same window position, always second floor, always centered in the frame, even though I'd been moving around. I went through maybe 15 photos. Every single one had it. My first thought was something on my lens. I checked, nothing there. Then I thought maybe it was a camera defect, some weird sensor issue. But the shape wasn't in the same spot on the screen. It moved with the windows. It was in the actual scene. I pulled up a photo of a house I'd shot maybe 10 minutes earlier. 2-story colonial with a zombie tableau in the yard. The family had clearly gone inside because the porch lights were off now, but In my photo, you could still see their jack-o'-lanterns glowing. And there in the upper left window, second story, was that same dark shape. Here's the thing. I could zoom in on my camera screen. When I did, the shape had texture, contours. It wasn't a reflection or a shadow. It looked almost like something pressed flat against the glass from inside. I felt this creeping cold start in my chest. I looked up from my camera screen to the house across the street, the one I was about to photograph. It was the only one on the block that wasn't decorated. Completely dark. No cars in the driveway, no lights on inside. It had that abandoned look, like maybe the owners were away for the holiday. I raised my camera anyway, just to see. Through the viewfinder, in the second-story window on the right side, there was something there. Not a smudge this time. A face. Pressed so hard against the glass that the features were flattened and distorted. Nose mashed sideways, lips stretched wide, pale. The eyes were open, just dark holes staring straight down at where I was standing. I lowered the camera. My hands were shaking enough that I had trouble keeping my grip. The house was still dark. No movement. But when I looked up at that second-story window, I could see it. Not clearly. Just the outline of something pressed against the glass, backlit by some faint light source deeper in the house. I don't know why this detail matters, but it stuck with me. The shape wasn't moving at all. No breathing motion, no shift in position. Completely still, like it had been there for hours, like it had been in every photo I'd taken that night, watching from different windows in different houses. I backed away slowly, not turning around until I reached my car. The whole time I kept glancing up at that window. The shape never moved. Even when I got in my car, even when I started the engine, it was still there, just pressed against the glass, staring down. I left the neighborhood, didn't finish the job. The association emailed me twice asking for the photos, and I sent them everything I had, but I didn't mention what was in them. I checked the images again when I got home, on my laptop with a proper screen. The shape was in every single one. In the zoomed shots, you could see details I hadn't noticed on the camera. The face had this expression, or maybe it was just the way the features were compressed against the glass, but it looked like it was smiling. I'm a delivery driver, nothing fancy, just contract work for one of those services that handles overflow from the big companies. I'm 24. Been doing this for about 2 years now, and I've delivered to some weird places. Rural routes pay better, so I always volunteer for them. That night, October 31st, I had one last package on my manifest. Some farmhouse way out past the county line, down a road I'd never heard of. I'm not the type who gets spooked easily for context. I've been down plenty of dark roads at weird hours, but this one felt different from the start. No streetlights, obviously, just my headlights cutting through absolute darkness. Trees pressed in close on both sides, branches making these gnarled shapes overhead. The GPS kept recalculating, like it wasn't sure the road even existed. When I finally found the address, I almost missed it. Just a rusted mailbox and a dirt driveway that curved away into the woods. I followed it for maybe a quarter mile before the house came into view. Single-story farmhouse, white siding that looked gray in my headlights. Not a single light on inside. No porch light, no window glow, nothing. But the front porch was covered, and I mean absolutely covered with presents. Dozens of them, all wrapped in shiny paper, bows still crisp and perfect. Reds, golds, silvers, all catching my headlights like some kind of bizarre Christmas display. And scattered between them, these fancy-looking bags of Halloween candy, the expensive kind you'd get at some boutique store. All of it completely untouched. No signs of kids, no tire tracks except mine, no footprints in the dust on those porch steps. The whole setup felt wrong. It was past 11 on Halloween night, and all this stuff just sitting there, in the middle of nowhere. I sat in my van for a minute, engine running, trying to decide if I should just leave the package at the bottom of the steps and go. Here's the thing, I needed proof of delivery. Photo of the package at the front door, that's company policy, so I grabbed it, got out, and walked up to the porch. The boards creaked under my feet, and I had to step carefully around all those presents to reach the door. I set the package down, pulled out my phone, took the picture. That's when my headlights caught movement. There was someone sitting on the porch swing at the far end. I hadn't seen them before. The swing was tucked in shadow, and they'd been sitting so still I'd mistaken them for part of the furniture. They wore a ghost costume, the cheap kind, just a white sheet with eye holes cut out. But the mask was plastic, one of those dollar store ghost faces with the black holes for eyes and the round O mouth. They didn't move, didn't acknowledge me at all, just sat there perfectly motionless, hands resting on their lap. In those hands was a bowl, small, delicate, looked like porcelain even in the bad light. It had some kind of pattern on it, intricate designs I couldn't make out from where I stood. I should have left. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was waiting for them to say something, to explain what they were doing out there in the dark. Instead, they moved for the first time since I'd noticed them. Slowly, deliberately, they tilted the bowl forward. Something poured out. Not candy. At first I thought it was confetti or rice or something, but when it hit the porch floor, there was no sound. None at all. Just this silent cascade that kept coming and coming, way too much for a bowl that size. My phone's flashlight was still on from taking the delivery photo, and when I pointed it toward the mess on the floor, I saw what it was. Fingernail clippings. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All different sizes. Some tiny like from a child's pinky, others thick and yellowed like from someone who'd let them grow way too long. They settled into this pile at the figure's feet, completely silent, and the bowl just kept pouring even though it should have been empty by then. The figure's head turned toward me, slow, mechanical, like it was on a swivel. Those black eye holes in the mask locked onto me, and I heard breathing behind the plastic, wet and ragged like someone with fluid in their lungs. I was back in my van before I consciously decided to move. Threw it in reverse, didn't bother turning around, just flew backward down that driveway with my eyes locked on the rearview mirror. The figure stood up from the swing. I saw that much. But I didn't wait to see what they'd do next. I called the company that night, told them I'd made the delivery, but there was something off about the location. They said they'd noted in the system. I didn't go into detail. What would I even say? That was almost a year ago. Last week I got a new assignment that made my stomach drop. Same address, another package for that farmhouse. I refused it, took the penalty on my account. I don't care if it costs me the job. I'm a junior at State studying economics. Pretty straightforward stuff, nothing weird about my life. That Sunday before Halloween, I was camped out on the 3rd floor of the main library trying to salvage my microeconomics grade before the midterm. The building was almost empty. Most people were either hungover from Saturday night or smart enough to study somewhere less depressing. I'd been there since noon, and by 4:30 the light coming through the windows had that flat, gray quality that makes everything feel abandoned. I was halfway through a practice problem set when I first heard the whispering. It came from the next row of stacks, maybe 15 feet away. Just low enough that I couldn't make out words, but persistent. I figured it was another student on a phone call, which was annoying since we were on a quiet floor, but I wasn't about to be that guy who shushes people. I tried to focus on elasticity curves and let it fade into background noise. But it didn't fade. The whisper kept going, this steady, strained murmur that sounded like someone reading a list. I caught fragments, numbers, maybe street names. The tone was what got under my skin. Not conversational, not casual. It had this mechanical quality like recitation, but the voice itself sounded tight, almost pained. After 10 minutes, I couldn't concentrate anymore. I stood up, annoyed, ready to give whoever it was a look that said, "Take it outside." I walked around the end of the stacks and turned into the next aisle. Empty. Completely empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Dust hung in the air. No one. I stood there feeling stupid, wondering if the sound had carried from somewhere else in the building, some acoustic trick of the old architecture. I was about to head back when I saw something on the floor where the voice had been coming from. A small piece of paper, maybe 3 inches square, pressed flat against the industrial carpet. It looked wet. I don't know why I picked it up. I should have left it there. The paper was damp, slightly wrinkled, covered in blue ink that had bled a little from the moisture. A list of names and addresses written in cramped, hurried script. Marcus Webb, 4458 Archer Street. Susan Padilla, 891 Greenmont Avenue, Apartment 2B. David Cross, 1247 Euclid Road. 5 names total, all formatted the same way. Addresses I didn't recognize in a city I'd never heard of. And it was my handwriting. Not similar, not close. Mine. I recognized the way I made my capital M's, the slight slant leftward I'd had since middle school, the way I compressed letters when I was writing fast. Every detail exact. I looked at the list again, checking, second-guessing myself, but no. Those were my letters, my hand. No question. But I'd never written these names. I'd never heard of these people. The air felt different suddenly. Colder. I stood there holding this wet piece of paper covered in my own handwriting in an empty aisle of the library, and my mouth went dry. I tried to think of explanations. Someone had copied my handwriting. I'd written this while distracted and forgotten. Something. But none of them worked. The paper was too wet, too immediate, like it had just been placed there. That's when I heard the whispering again, right behind me this time, close enough I should have felt breath on my neck. The voice was reciting the same type of list, names and addresses, but now I could hear the words clearly. It took me 3 entries to realize what I was hearing. My name. My dorm address from freshman year. My name. My parents' house in Michigan, street number exact, my name. My current apartment off campus, unit number included. I spun around. No one. The aisle behind me stretched back toward the windows, empty, dust still hanging in that same shaft of gray light. But the voice hadn't stopped. It was still going, still reciting, and now I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Beside me, behind me, underneath, everywhere and nowhere, my own information repeated in that strained whisper, addresses I'd lived at, places I'd been, and the voice sounded more and more like it was struggling, like something was forcing words through a too small space. I backed toward my table, legs shaking, dropped my laptop into my bag without shutting it down. The whispering followed me. Not louder, not closer, just constant now, overlapping itself until it sounded like multiple voices all reciting my information in a round. I made it to the stairs, took them 2 at a time down to the ground floor. The whispering cut off the moment I pushed through the main doors into the cold October air. I'm a maintenance guy for a mid-sized apartment complex in Portland. 34 years old, been doing this work for 6 years. It's mostly clogged drains and busted locks, nothing exciting. That afternoon, I got a call about a smoke detector chirping in 107. The tenant, an older woman named Mrs. Alvarez, wasn't answering her door, but the beeping was loud enough that neighbors were complaining. Manager gave me the master key and told me to handle it. I knocked twice, announced myself, then let myself in. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn, that stale air smell of a place that's been sealed up too long. No sign of Mrs. Alvarez. Just that piercing beep every 30 seconds, loud enough to make my teeth hurt. The detector was mounted in the hallway between the living room and bedroom. I dragged over a chair, popped the cover off, expecting the usual. Dying battery, maybe some dust. But when I pulled the unit down from the bracket, something felt wrong. The weight was off, not lighter, heavier. I turned it over in my hands. The battery compartment was packed completely full of ash. Not dust. Ash. Fine and white, pressed in so tight it had the density of packed snow. When I pried some out with my thumbnail, it had this faint smell. Acrid, chemical, but underneath that, something organic, like burning hair. I've changed hundreds of smoke detectors. You get dust, dead bugs, sometimes a spider nest. Never ash. And never packed in like someone had deliberately filled every available space in that tiny compartment. I bagged the whole unit, figuring I'd just replace it and write up something vague for the manager, but as soon as I dropped it in my tool bag, the beeping continued. Same interval, same pitch, coming from the living room now. I stood there in the hallway listening. The sound was coming from the corner near the window, from the air vent. One of those small return vents about a foot square. The beeping was definitely coming from inside the ductwork, but that didn't make sense. There's no wiring in there, no battery-powered anything. I walked over and crouched down. The metal vent cover was vibrating slightly with each beep, like something was pressed right up against the other side. I pulled my phone out, turned on the flashlight, and unscrewed the cover. It came away clean. No dust, no gaps. The seal had been perfect. The duct behind it was dark. The beeping had stopped. I don't know why I did what I did next. I should have just screwed the cover back on and called it done. But I leaned in closer, shining my light into the ductwork. It was narrow, maybe 8 inches deep before it turned at a sharp angle. The metal was pristine. No dust, no debris. Nothing. Then I heard it. Not the beeping. Something else. A scratching sound. Rhythmic, desperate. Like fingernails on metal, but muffled. Like it was coming from deeper in the ductwork than should have been possible given the building's layout. I knew the structure of this place. There was nothing beyond that first turn except a short connection to the main shaft. Maybe 3 feet total. I put my ear against the opening. The scratching got louder, faster, and then I heard breathing, quick and panicked, the kind of breathing someone does when they're trying not to scream. Then a voice, so faint I almost missed it under the sound of scraping metal. Please. I jerked back so hard I knocked over my toolbox. The sound cut off instantly. Complete silence. I grabbed the vent cover, my hand shaking so badly I dropped the first screw twice before getting it started. I didn't care about doing it right. I just needed it covered, sealed. I left my toolbox, left the old smoke detector in the bag on the floor. I walked out, locked the door, and went straight to the manager's office. Told her the detector was replaced and working fine. She asked why I looked pale. I told her I was coming down with something. Mrs. Alvarez never came back. Her daughter came by a week later to collect her things. Said her mother had moved to a care facility suddenly, something about early-stage dementia and paranoid episodes. The daughter mentioned Mrs. Alvarez had been convinced someone was trapped in the walls, kept calling maintenance about sounds no one else could hear. I've been back to 107 twice since then for other issues. New tenant now, a grad student. The air vent is still there in the corner. I don't look at it when I'm in that room. But last month, I was fixing the kitchen sink and I heard it. Just once. That same scratching sound, distant and muffled, coming from somewhere behind the walls. I finished the job in half the time it should have taken. The tenant asked if I was okay. I told her the pipes were fine and left. My name's Jaden Hansen. I'm 26 and I've been running marathons for about 3 years now. Not professionally or anything. I work in IT support during the day, but I take my training seriously. 5 nights a week I do an 8-mile loop through Riverside Park after work. The park's about 4 miles from my apartment, mostly wooded trails that wind along the creek. It's usually dead after 7, especially on weeknights, which I preferred. No traffic, no crowds, just me and my pace. This was the week before Halloween. I remember because someone had put up decorations along the trail, paper skeletons zip-tied to fence posts, those orange plastic pumpkins hanging from low branches, cheap stuff probably left over from someone's yard sale. I noticed one decoration in particular on my second lap around, a little vinyl ghost, maybe 2 feet tall, tied to a branch about 15 feet up an oak tree. White sheet design with black oval eyes, the kind you'd buy at a dollar store. It was flapping a bit in the wind when I passed it. 5 minutes later, I passed the same ghost. I slowed down, checked my GPS watch. According to the route tracker, I was right on course. A straight section of trail that ran parallel to the creek for about 2 miles before looping back. But there it was again. Same tree, same height, same cheap vinyl ghost twisting in the breeze. I stopped completely this time. Stood there catching my breath and staring at it. Maybe I'd gotten turned around somehow, missed a fork in the path. But I'd run this route probably 200 times. I knew every turn. I started running again, slower now, paying closer attention to landmarks. Past the wooden footbridge, past the boulder with the faded graffiti. These were markers I recognized in the correct order, moving forward. 10 minutes later, should have taken me well past the halfway point, I saw the ghost again. This time I actually said something out loud. Just what the hell to nobody. My watch still showed I was covering distance. The GPS line on the screen was a clean, straight path heading north along the creek. But somehow I kept looping back to that same oak tree. The park felt different now, smaller, like the trail was folding in on itself. I picked up my pace, just wanting to finish the run and get out, but every 5 or 6 minutes, there it was, the ghost. Same branch, same tree. By the 5th time I passed it, the sun had fully set, and the motion sensor lights along the trail were starting to flicker on. That's when I started to feel it. This pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with running. The kind of sensation you get when you know something's wrong but can't identify what. The trees looked the same. The path looked the same. But everything felt compressed, like the park was shrinking around me. I tried turning back the way I came. Didn't matter. 3 minutes later, there was the ghost. I stopped running. Just stood there in the middle of the trail, hands on my knees, trying to think. My watch said I'd covered almost 9 miles. I should have been home by now. Should have passed the parking lot exit 20 minutes ago, but I couldn't find it. Every direction I turned led back to that same section of trail, that same oak tree, that same decoration. That's when I saw the second ghost. It was tied to the tree right next to the first one. Same size, same design. I hadn't noticed it before, I'm certain of that, but there it was, hanging from a branch maybe 6 feet away from the original. And it was moving, not swaying, not flapping in wind. There wasn't any wind now. The air had gone completely still, that heavy stillness you get right before a storm. But this ghost was moving anyway, twisting, jerking, like something underneath the vinyl was struggling against the knot that held it to the branch. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds. The movement was rhythmic but wrong, like breathing that's just slightly too fast or too slow to be human. The vinyl pulled taut, then collapsed, then pulled taut again. And I realized, God, even saying this now makes my skin crawl. I realized it looked like something was trying to get out. I ran. I don't mean I jogged or picked up my pace. I mean I sprinted, full speed, not even looking at the trail. I hit the parking lot maybe 40 seconds later. It was right there, right where it should have been the entire time. My car started fine. The drive home was normal. I didn't look at my watch until I got back to my apartment. According to the GPS log, I'd run a perfect 8-mile loop. Standard route, standard time, like nothing had happened.